Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through some OTAs winners and losers now that is over with before mandatory minicamp opens up. But before we get to that, I was looking at the YouTube analytics for the month of June, and we demolished the Chiefs report in subscribers for the month of May, and now they are nearly 3xing what we have done so far through June. So help us take down the Chiefs report in subscribers. Hit that sub button down below. What's going on, Broncos Country? Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Like I said, coming up on today's show, I thought this would be a good time to run through some organized team activities, winners and losers for the Broncos before their 3-day mandatory minicamp opens up tomorrow, Tuesday through Thursday, and then we won't see them until training camp at the end of July. So our first winner out of 3 weeks of OTAs is Jarrett Stidham. I know everyone just wants to hear great news about Bo Nix, and we do have some good news to share about Bo Nix, but I do want to be honest with you guys, and the reality is Jarrett Stidham had a really good OTA couple of practices. Now, there are 10 OTA sessions. The media is only invited to 3, so 30% of what happens at OTAs becomes public knowledge to some level, and at that 30% attendance rate from the media, Jarrett Stidham looked like the QB1 of this team. Not that Bo Nix was bad in OTAs, but for now, I think Jarrett Stidham remains QB1. It's definitely going to be a fun quarterback battle and neck for much of the summer and going into training camp and preseason, but at this exact moment, I would say Jarrett Stidham, gun to my head, is still the starting quarterback for this team. We still have 13 weeks to go until week 1 in Seattle, but Jarrett Stidham comes off the last two games starting for the Broncos in 2023, and I think he's going to ride that at least into training camp coming out of mandatory minicamp. Now, I invite you guys to get your predictions down below. Who do you think will be the week 1 starter? Zach Wilson, who we'll talk about later on, Jarrett Stidham, or Bo Nix? Type the jersey number for the quarterback you think will be the week 1 starter in the comment section. I go back and forth. I just can't make my mind up. I think Jarrett Stidham is the starter at this present moment. The question really is, can Bo Nix overtake Jarrett Stidham in the month of August? And he may not. We've seen a lot of notable quarterbacks go round 1 and not start week 1. Like Baker Mayfield was taken first overall. He didn't start week 1. Justin Herbert, Tua, a lot of guys. So I go back and forth, but I'm kind of leaning right now at this present moment to Stidham at least starts week 1. And then we probably see Bo Nix come very, very shortly. First loser from OTA, Zach Wilson. Now, I should preface with it's organized team activities. They're voluntary practices. There's no pads. There's no contact. No one can be that huge of a winner or that big of a loser. But if we're looking at the 3 quarterbacks who had the worst 3 practices that were open to the media, that maybe that was an accurate representation of all 10 practices, or unfortunately for Zach Wilson, those 3 days just happened to be the 3 worst practices he had, and no one saw the 7 other great ones. But Zach Wilson has looked like QB3 so far, right? Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham have been a lot more smart with the football. There's no pressure. I mean, there's no contact, so it's a quarterback's paradise, right? There's no real sacking or anything like that at all. And despite that, we have seen some interceptions from Zach Wilson. We have seen some mock sacks where if there was contact allowed, Zach Wilson would have been sacked. So through 10 OTA practices, 3 open to the media, I would say Wilson is pulling up the rear at the moment, which is kind of, I guess, funny because he's got the most experience by a country mile. The guy has, over 35 starts, give it 34 starts, and despite that, he has looked like the quarterback with the least amount of experience between Nick Stidham and himself. So, unfortunately, Wilson definitely has some ground to make up, and that ground just may be trying to hold on to a roster spot if the Broncos are already determined in their mind that Bo Nix is QB1, and it's up to Stidham and Wilson to battle out for QB2, and the loser gets cut, which that would mean that Zach Wilson's a lot cheaper than Jarrett Stidham, actually, so that would mean saving some money if they move down from Stidham over Wilson. So Wilson only has to prove that he is tie goes to the runner good, because he may be just a little bit behind Stidham, but not enough to warrant holding on to Jarrett Stidham for the extra salary cap implications. So that's something to at least put in the back of your head when evaluating Wilson or Stidham for QB2. Second winner from OTAs, finally, we talk about Bo Nix. I do have Bo Nix as the second winner. It's not in any kind of order, but I do think it's important to note that Jarrett Stidham, albeit very early, has looked like the slightly better quarterback, in my opinion, and several other boots-on-the-ground opinion between the two QBs. Now, don't get me wrong. There has been a lot of really good praise from players and coaching staff about Bo Nix and just where he's at mentally. Like, Sean Payton runs a really complex offense. Sean Payton talked about how there's basically like 3 strands of offenses in the NFL, and learning each offense is like learning a brand new language. And for Bo Nix, a rookie, to pick it up in the month of May and June says a lot about where he's at right now and where he could be at after more time passes for him to consume the playbook and to learn the terminology and to pick up what Sean Payton is putting down. So there has been a lot of really good things about Bo Nix said, a lot of nice things said about Bo Nix, what's going on in between the ears. Now, he has been relatively conservative, I would say, so far with the football. It's glorified flag football out there. The DBs can't really make contact with the wide receivers, but he has not been putting the football in harm's way, and that's awesome. I don't think we should knock him for that. We just haven't really seen him take huge shots down the field, for example, right? So that's going to come with more time and more chemistry with his wide receivers, but he has been on the more conservative side than I would say the aggressive side. But still, it's OTAs, and next will be minicamp. There's no pads. It's not going to be a really accurate representation of how an NFL game would ever look like anyway. But I'm definitely excited to see Bo Nix start connecting with Courtland Sutton. Sutton announced that he will be in attendance for the 3-day mandatory minicamp, and it'll be Nix's first opportunity, I think, to really start to form a bond and chemistry with his number 1 wide receiver. So can't wait to see that connection start to get together and start picking things up. Now, before we get to our final winner and loser, name a random Broncos quarterback for me in the comments section below. The more random, the better. I am banning all Peyton Mannings and John Elways down below. I want Case Keenum. I want Joe Flacco. I'll even take a Jake Plummer. That's not too random, though. Give me a random quarterback down in the comment section. Second loser, I'll go with Greg Dulcich. I don't like doing losers for guys that have injuries. That's not fair to them. There's so much of it they cannot control. But we do have to acknowledge the reality that Greg Dulcich chronically is injured, right? He has played 2 seasons so far in the NFL, and he has missed 64% of his games. Last year, he played a grand total of 32 offensive snaps. That's like 1/2 of football. He played a half of football last year. It's a bummer. It sucks because we saw what Greg Dulcich can be capable of 2 years ago. Was it week 5, Monday Night Football against the Chargers? Goes off for like a touchdown or 2 in that game. But unfortunately, we have been chasing that for almost 2 years now. And my fear is if Greg Dulcich can't prove that he is available, because ultimately the best ability is availability, over the next few weeks and months, I wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos decide, or if Sean Payton decides, we're just going to wipe our hands clean and give Greg Dulcich a new fresh start elsewhere, because it doesn't seem to be happening here in Denver, which is a bummer because, like I said, when he's been on the field, like he's been a really solid tight end, and he's still really early in his career, so the potential is very much there, a high ceiling type player, but don't be blown away if you see the Broncos decide, you know what, it's time to move on from Dulcich, give everyone a fresh start. Plus, they really like the young tight end Lucas Kroll. He was awesome at OTA, so he could be flying up their depth chart, and they may feel like now's a good time to make a move. Before we get to my final winner from OTAs, if you want to get some new Broncos gear in your closet, go to chatsports.com/DEN combo. You can get not only a hat, but a t-shirt as well. T-shirt hat combination at chatsports.com/DEN combo. 25% off. I put that link for you all because I love you in the comments and description of today's video. Final winner from OTAs, I'm going to go with running back Jaleel McLaughlin. I could have gone a handful of different directions at this spot, like Lucas Kroll, for example, but I'm going to go with highlight reel Jaleel, a player that last year I was like, hey, if you want someone to keep an eye on as a UDFA that could make the 53-man roster, how about that running back from Youngstown State? And that's exactly what happened. And I'm not getting off the highlight reel Jaleel hype train here. Sean Payton had some really nice things to say about the young running back. Quote, he's here at 5:15 a.m., even in the offseason. First one here running in the weight room. By the time he's at breakfast and most people are arriving, he's put in a good hour and a half's worth of work. It's just the way he's wired, and it's impressive. I'm just a sucker for first one in, last one out type of guys. Personally, I feel like I fall under that type of bucket here. I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I always love the idea of being first or second, third guy in the office and getting ahead for your start of the workday before everyone else starts filing in at whatever hour your office opens up. So for me, I'm always a fan of those players that find their way onto the practice field first before anyone else, which unfortunately in the NFL doesn't always cut it. Like I remember last year, and someone can help me with the name, there was that wide receiver who was always the first guy onto the Broncos practice field for training camp, and he was the very first player cut when they had to get down from 90-man. So doesn't always work out, but I think Jaleel McLaughlin is in a very good spot, and it's not about him making the roster anymore. I'll say he's a lock to make the 53-man roster because there's no doubt he's been putting in a lot of work this offseason to stay in good shape and improve off of a really strong rookie season as a rusher and also as a receiver. But when you look at the Broncos running back depth chart, like they have some questions about Javonte Williams long-term here. He's entering the final year of his contract. Samaje Perine is here for the final season of his 2-year deal, and then they're likely going to move on from the veteran back. So Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, like those are some younger guys that have an opportunity to grab a good amount of carries this year and prove that they can be future backs for this team beyond just 2024. So I'm expecting a bigger role for Jaleel McLaughlin this year. Last year we saw him used in some of the screen game, in the red zone especially. It just felt like every time they gave him the ball, a good thing or two happened. So I think we're going to see more from highlight reel Jaleel, and I'm really happy to see that he's been going overtime this offseason to make sure he's in the best shape possible and in the best position possible to be successful when his number is called on. So let me ask you guys this question. Will the Broncos have a 1,000-yard rusher? Give me a Y for yes or N for no. I don't think the Broncos have had a 1,000-yard rusher since C.J. Anderson. Maybe Melvin Gordon did it once, but I don't think he did. So it's been a little while. Let me know down below in the comment section whether or not you think Denver will have a 1,000-yard rusher. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow. We're talking mandatory minicamp, and then we've got summer break. So we have a lot of topics to go over the summer, getting ready for the training camp. So make sure to subscribe and don't miss a thing.